guys, welcome back to the Camp Chronicles podcast. We're super excited to be filming the second episode already, and we also just wanted to say a massive thank you for all the support that we received on the last episode. It's so nice to see that all the hard work that we're putting in is being reciprocated and that you guys are really enjoying listening to it. There's obviously so much more about camp that we're going to discuss, and today we kind of thought that we'd just talk a little bit more about our own camp journeys, so kind of how we got started with camp, how we found out about it, and then kind of discuss a few reasons as to why we honestly think that everyone should take part in camp. Because I don't know about you, Summer, but I literally will tell everyone, you should have worked at a summer camp, you should work at a summer camp.
I literally sent a message just like that earlier on to someone, and I was just like, why have regrets of not going just because you've heard stories of other people's, when if it's something you really want to do, go and do it, and at least you can live life knowing that you tried it. But I just think there's a camp out there for everybody, so everyone should do it, and then they'll end up like us going back for a fourth summer.
Totally agree. So how did you first find out about camp? Because I feel now most people probably find out through social media. I don't know, were you the same?
Well, I think when we started it wasn't that big on likes of TikTok and YouTube and stuff like that. But when I actually found out about it, I think I was like 10 or 11, and I was playing out in the streets.
Wow.
And I know it's a crazy story, and there was a girl who lives at the bottom of the street. She was quite a few years older than me. She was going out to do Camp America, and she was going to a camp. I think it was in New York or Pennsylvania. It was one of the popular ones. And she was going out to do it, and I remember the talks about it, and then just the hype around it. And I remember researching about it and thinking oh, I'd love to do this when I'm older. And then it's something I've talked about literally for years now about doing. And then when I finally turned 18, I remember applying straight away through an agency, and I was like, this is 100% what I want to do. I didn't tell any of my family that I'd done it until I'd paid the deposit, and I was like, look, I'm going to work at a summer camp in America next year.
I was totally different. Obviously you knew about it from such a young age, whereas I didn't honestly know that it was a thing at all. I knew I loved America. I'd been on holiday to America a few times with my family, and I just love going. But it was in 2019, I think it was, summer 2019. This guy that I know from basketball went and did it. I don't know if it was his first summer or if it was his second summer, and he was posting about it. And actually my best friend's mom had been speaking to his mom, and they were like, oh, it sounds like something that you two would enjoy doing. So summer 2019 we applied to go for 2020, and we all know what happened in 2020. Unfortunately I didn't get to go, and then so I was like, okay, I still really want to do it, so deferred for 2021, and then again still didn't manage to get to camp in 2021, and then finally in 2022 I managed to make my way across the pond to camp. So yeah, it was kind of just word of mouth for me as well.
I bet it was such a nice, well, I say nice and frustrating build up to it, because you were meant to go for so many times, but it must have been such a surreal feeling, having meant to have been going a few years before that, to have actually turned up at camp, was it?
It was crazy. I think because for literally 3 years I'd been just building it up and building it up in my mind, and I think the excitement and then the disappointment twice of thinking, okay, I'm gonna go to camp. And for 2 summers it was, although because of COVID realistically we knew we weren't gonna go, camps were still pushing for, it's okay, as long as the embassy opens you can get your visa and still go. So pretty much right up until a month before I was supposed to go out, I was convinced in 2020 that I was making it to camp, and everyone around me was saying to me, be realistic here, it's not going to happen, the whole country's locked down. But I had it in my head that I was going to camp. Obviously I didn't, so I just kept pushing it back till 2022. But I am so glad that I did push it back and just waited it out, rather than having kind of that hope of going but then just never ending up going.
Yeah, I remember in 2022 during orientation, all of head staff were talking, and they were saying the energy is so crazy, and it's because for the first time in a couple of years being able to have the international staff back. And I remember the energy in 2022, it was just crazy, and it was you could see the excitement in the returners' faces who were were waiting to get back to camp, and then obviously the people like that were in your position that were meant to go the previous years, that they were finally there.
Yeah.
It was just such a surreal feeling, and yeah, I think I now couldn't imagine not going back. I don't know about you.
Yeah, honestly, if I could find a job that would let me go back to camp for the rest of my life, I totally would.
Yeah,
I part of me like still wishes that I obviously could have got to go in 2020 when I was supposed to. I would have obviously been much further ahead in my camp career by now. I think now I'm nearly turning 25, and being 25, you are kind of at that like top age group of
yeah,
international staff that tend to come to camp. I know yourself being 21, you've got a good few summers left in you for sure.
yeah,
But I have made the most of summers, and I'm definitely going to try and make the most of next summer as much as I can, just because eventually I am going to have to start getting a job where I
yeah.
can't leave and run away every summer. But yeah, did you only want to go to camp because of just hearing about it through obviously like your neighbour, or was there
Yeah,
any other
so
factors?
obviously I've I heard about it through Paige, and she had like an amazing experience, and then obviously it was years before I was ever able to go, but it was
Mhm.
always something that had stuck in my mind, and I'd always dreamed of going to America, like New York, as you can see that poster behind me. I think I got for Christmas in like 2016. um I'd always dreamed of going to America, and this was a way where I could go and live in America and work and have this surreal experience that you don't get every day. It was
Mhm.
like that as well. And then when it led up to actually being able to go, I was like on TikTok and YouTube, and there was a couple of people that I'd watched. There was this guy called Hass the Trainer that had been to one,
Mhm.
and he went to a YMCA camp, and it looked like such an unreal experience. And then I obviously saw who's now like one of my closest friends, Vic. She was posting TikToks and stuff like that of
Mhm.
Tyler Hill. And when I saw Tyler Hill online, I was always certain that I was going to go to a camp that was for underprivileged kids. That wasn't going to be a camp that had a lot of funding. But
Yeah.
then I ended up at Tyler Hill, and probably I wouldn't look back now.
Yeah.
And it was definitely like Paige's experience, and then when it got closer to the time, seeing other people's experiences on social media, even though there wasn't that many videos out at the time, I definitely that was what made me want to go and do it.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that you had like an idea in your mind of what sort of camp you wanted to go to, because I was the total opposite. Like, so me and my best friend Jess both applied through an agency obviously to go to camp, and I didn't really do much research before. I was just kind of like, oh my God, working in America over the summer, this sounds insane, sign me up. And I really didn't think much about like the different types of camps or anything like that. I just filled out my application. Obviously, it was sent off to all the camps, and Camp Echo was the first camp that reached out to me. And I was actually supposed to be hired as a basketball counselor for summer
Really?
2020. Yeah, so I have experience like coaching basketball. Usually like the main group that I'd work with was under 14 girls, so they were like 12, 13, 14. So that was my top skill on my application, and I was hired initially as a basketball counselor. But I'd never really looked into it much in terms of like the roles that are offered at camps, the different types of camps. I just kind of went in totally blind.
Yeah.
Looked at their website. I was like, this sounds great. It sounds like fun. And then I almost did my research after I'd accepted the job offer, to be fair. I spent obviously the 2, 3 years that I was waiting, watching probably every single summer camp, Camp America vlogger on
Yeah.
YouTube. And my camp does this thing called Echo Cast, where on a Sunday it's like a big video like roundup of the whole week, and
Oh
the whole
wow,
camp
that's
sits and
amazing.
watches it. And they upload them onto YouTube eventually. I think I watched every single Echo Cast just to get a feel of what camp was gonna be like. So yeah, it's interesting obviously that you can have two different sides of things, where you had it like an inkling and obviously done a bit of research, and then myself who just did it on a whim.
It's so funny you said about the basketball counselor thing, but there's a joke at my camp, because in my first summer I was actually hired to be the volleyball slash
No
general
way.
counsellor. like the
Mhm.
volleyball specialist. And if you know me, you know I've never played volleyball in my life. But I said on the interview, I was like, you know what it is? I'm willing to do anything and put myself out there. So I'm so happy to do
Yeah.
it. I lasted like a week and a half doing volleyball. And then my division leader at the time was like, no, like you're going to be general counsellor. And I was so grateful for that.
Mhm.
And they didn't end up having a volleyball specialist that summer. And I don't think they've had one since, to be fair.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's such a joke now that runs every single year when you walk past the volleyball court or something. It was like, oh, weren't you meant to be the volleyball specialist one year? And I was like, it's never left
Maybe.
me. Never left me.
It's good thing though about camp is obviously you can go in with like a specific job role and get to camp and realize that okay, maybe this isn't working, and they are very, I've found anyways, they are very accommodating in terms of like moving people around. So I think a lot of people want to go to camps and be general counselors, don't they? I think like especially
Yeah.
online at the minute, a lot of people I see want to go and be general counselors. It is obviously a lot harder to get those roles, I think, because there are so many returners and like American staff that step up to be counselors. But you can still go as an activity counselor like you did and gain the experience as a general counselor. You still have that opportunity to spend the time with the kids, which is really nice. So I think like for anyone that is thinking of applying but is dead set on being a general counselor, I think be open to being an activity counselor as well, because you kind of get the best of both worlds.
100%, because you get that opportunity to get to know all of the kids on camp. Like you get to
Yeah.
see all the different age groups come to your specialty area. And also at the same time, I don't know if it's like this at your camp, but we have a planner, and like not every session you will be at that specialty area. You've got opportunities to
Hmm.
go back and be with your kids, and then you've got your opportunities of like rest times and stuff like that. But you kind of get the best of both worlds being a specialist counsellor, because you get
Yeah.
to have that close knit bond with your division of kids, but at the same time, you get to know all the other kids and get to build relationships with older and younger divisions.
Yeah. So how did you find that your like role progressed over the year as well? Because I know obviously if you said the first summer you went, you were like a general counsellor slash
Yeah.
volleyball, which never really happened. Um, and then obviously like ending up being like a lead counsellor. Like how did you end up progressing? Like was it a conversation that you had at the end of one summer, or was it just like that when they were doing the hiring process, they were like, "Do you want to do this?"
Yeah, so my first summer I was obviously volleyball slash general, ended up just being general. Second summer I moved up with my same girls and I was general counsellor again. But I was
Mhm.
very fortunate that my division leader at the time wanted people to step up into a
Mhm.
leadership role, and she gave us the opportunities to show, head staff our like abilities to be in that
Yeah.
role. So basically what happened was, in lead up to the third summer, I actually reached out and I said, look, I'm really interested in being the group lead for my girls. If there's
Mhm.
any like possibility of this happening, please let me know. I'd be happy to have a conversation. And then I got a response back just saying, we're still in the process of figuring things out. We're not 100% sure who's returning or what's happening yet, but we'll let you know, and your name's definitely like in the circle of conversations that we're having.
Mhm.
So I kind of took that as maybe I wasn't going to get the position, which I didn't
Mhm.
mind, because as long as I had my girls back, like that's all that mattered to me at the time. And
Yeah.
then it was actually, I think it was the beginning of May, and the assistant director at my camp texted me and she was like, can you quickly call? And
Mhm.
I got that text message while I was sat in the office at
Mhm.
work, and I was like, I was
Ooh.
just panicking. I was like, what is this? What is this? And I was like, is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? So I was like, yeah, of course. Jumped on a call with her. We were just having like a normal conversation, and then she just went in to say, like, I'm pleased to ask you, like, would you want to be a group leader for your girls this summer?
Mhm.
And literally a month later, I was in the position and I was doing it, and it's probably professionally the best summer I've ever had.
It's bizarre that I don't know what other job you would work where within almost just, well, our kids are there for 7 weeks. Within a 7 week period, after only working somewhere for 7 weeks, you can be like promoted
Yeah,
so
no,
quickly.
totally.
It's wild. Like my first summer, I had 10th grade girls. And when it got to October time, I think, after getting back after that summer and I'd said, I want to come back to camp, I had a phone call with like the girls' village leader, and she was basically saying about the structure of camp for next year, and she was like, would love for you to be a lead. It was done slightly different last year for us. So we've got division leaders, and then like who are in charge of like upper camp and lower camp. And then I was like a lead, but so I was kind of like, I like to call myself Brooke's little minion because Brooke is our division leader.
Yeah.
So I was meant to be with like 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, but I was living in the cabin with 10th grade. And for me, I actually really struggled with it. I really like I thrived, and I feel like in myself I did a great job with 10th grade. But I know that it was a lot harder for me because I was in the cabin and is still a cabin counsellor to move between the other two grades.
Yeah.
So I was really happy kind of with the way that I worked within 10th grade, but I do feel like unfortunately 11th and 9th I struggled to be able to like branch off with them a bit more.
Yeah.
Whereas this summer they had obviously Brooke still as division lead for upper camp, but we had one lead per grade, and I think it worked so much better. So I had the 11th grade girls this time, and it was just so much easier to like focus my attention on them and help them to have the best summer ever. But I think it's such a scary thing at the same time being promoted to lead, because you are almost like the go-to person for a whole grade of kids. And for me, we had to we took the kids on trips out of camp. You know, this year we went to Penn State and Lehigh University, and we did a West Coast trip. And because I had trip experience, I was like the lead for those trips. So that's all the girls and the boys. I was the one that was ultimately making decisions for them. At first, I was kind of like pooping myself a bit. I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
these like 50 kids are like literally under my control. Like I'm the one that's got to keep them safe. But then at the same time, like I really almost like enjoyed having that responsibility, like, and it kind of like challenges you a little bit more, doesn't it?
No, 100%. I mean, something you said was about, the first summer as a lead, you only managing to really focus on one set of people and feeling bad,
Hmm.
like not focusing your energy other places at the same time. But it is hard at camp to split yourself into being in all the places you need to be at once
Hmm.
type of thing. But for like me this year, I found that I managed to get to know all of the kids in the division because
Hmm.
I split my time between the three bunks that we had, and I
Yeah.
was so happy to be able to come away from the summer and be able to say like I had a meaningful conversation with every single one of them kids this summer. Whereas in
Yeah.
my previous other two summers as general counsellor, I found that I mainly focused on my bunk, and that's like
Yeah.
where I put my attention the most. Obviously, you go to the different areas with all of the kids, but a lot of your core time is with your bunk of girls.
Hmm.
So I found that this summer I was able to come away from it and say that I'd been able to have a meaningful conversation with every single one of the kids, rather than previous years being able to only say I built a strong bond with just my bunk of girls.
Yeah. And I think that is something though that as like if it's your first time working at a summer camp, it is hard, especially as a general counsellor, to feel like you can like branch outside of your bunk. So obviously I had 10th grade the first time, and there was three bunks within 10th grade, and although I did know some of the other girls, I was just so focused on like learning everything about camp and not having a clue what was going on half the time, that I was just so focused on my girls. And then I think that's the nice thing as well about coming back as a returner, because you've got a general idea of camp and how everything runs, that you can spend more time kind of like creating bonds with the other kids, like either in the full grade or even things like, I don't know how much your between boys and girls there's like an overlap at your camp, but activity periods are separate, but then like meal times at the end of the day, like when they have time to kind of like chill, like it's all boys and girls together. And first summer I feel like I barely knew any of the boys until the last like maybe 2 or 3 weeks of camp, whereas last year and this year I was like, right, I need to make it my mission to get to know everyone from the
Yeah.
get-go. It just makes it so much better, I think, doesn't it?
The way it works at our camp is that we have all of our activity periods on our own, like girls and boys split,
Hmm.
and then on a night time it's the same in the dining hall, it's split girls boys side, but then on a night time when you have canteen, that's when the girls and the boys kind of mix with each other, and it's so funny to
Yeah.
watch the girls mixing with the boys. Especially as my girls are getting older now, I'm seeing it more.
Yeah.
But we also do a counsellor swap during the summer. It's during trip week when upper camp go on like the trips away from camp. We do counsellor swap, and like the general boys and the general girl counsellors switch around. So we look after the boys for like half a
Oh,
day,
that's
and the
fun.
boys come and look after the girls for half a day. And I feel like the boy counsellors thrive on girls' side because the girls love that they've got boy counsellors and that
Yeah.
they'll go to the lake and stuff like that and can paint the counsellors' faces and stuff like that.
hmm
Whereas I feel like the boy campers just don't want anything to do with us. It's just
Yeah.
like, oh right, okay, you're here. I remember in my second summer, me and Heather, we went down to the gym, and two of the boys just wanted to go and sit in the gym, so we were like, all right, we'll take you. This was for like an elective period, and we just
hmm
kind of sat there and we like didn't really know what to do or say,
Yeah.
because we feel like even though we're like at one camp and we're a co-ed camp, I feel like sometimes boy side runs a lot differently to what girl side do. But
Yeah.
yeah, the girl campers love it when the boys are their counsellors, but the boys don't so much love it when the girl counsellors are there.
Yeah, I know. I get you with that. It's sometimes a little bit harder, isn't it? Like the girls have almost got an initial innate like want to be
Yeah.
like, oh my god, the boys are here, whereas the boys don't have that so much. So that bit can be a bit harder for sure. But I think it's probably a good idea, like we're talking about why people should even come to camp. I know professionally, like a big one is if you want to work with kids, sorry, in the
Yeah.
future, then obviously coming and working at a summer camp is amazing to see. You literally were basically looking after these kids 24 hours for 7 weeks or however many weeks of the year. And that'll look really good on your CV as well.
It does. It looks amazing. I
hmm
know, like most jobs that I've ever applied for, the first thing that they do ask me about is my camp experience and
Yeah.
what I learned from it, and how it was working in America, because you have to remember you're working with people from all over the world too.
hmm
So it gives also you them communication skills as well as like natural leadership skills you kind of learn at camp. There's just so much you can take away from it professionally, but then also socially, like I just said, the same reason you get to meet people from all over the world. I don't know
hmm
about you, but like I have friends now who I consider family, who are in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, America. Like I have places to go and stay and visit whenever I want now.
hmm
So it's like socially as well, the camp aspect is such a nice experience. And professionally, it can take you so far, and it sets you out from the rest of the other candidates because you've had this experience.
Like you were saying about obviously meeting so many people and having that social experience. Like personally, I feel like I thrive in a job where you kind of like make like meaningful connections with people. I think the whole part of camp is you work in there with people, but also the main reason you're there is for the kids. Like you shouldn't, in my personal opinion, you shouldn't go to camp if you don't enjoy working with kids at least a little bit. Like that
Uh,
is the main job.
yeah,
And it's so nice to make those personal connections with the kids and like just be like asking them about their day, or like they'll tell you about their life at home, or like they'll tell you about like their friends and their family at home. And like I think it's so nice to kind of try and make a difference and just make sure that they have the best summer possible.
definitely. I think I was quite guilty in my first summer of, being so caught up in the social aspects of things. But
hmm
when it came to the end of it and the feeling of leaving your girls, it's like, it's such a sad feeling seeing them like kind of move on and go back to their
Yeah.
lives, and you kind of go back to your lives. And then like the closer it got to the second summer, I was like, the main reason I'm going back to camp is for my kids. Like that's all I
Mhm.
care about, is going back and being with them, and the friends who I meet, I'll be friends for life. But my main focus for them 7 weeks are my kids. And then I know going into this summer that's just gone, a lot of returning counsellors that I was really close with didn't return.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh, like, how do you feel? Like, your closest friends aren't coming back. And I'm like, I'm going to miss them. Don't get me wrong. But my main focus, and again, the reason why I want to go back to camp every summer, is for my kids and
hmm
to watch them grow up and see the changes in their personalities, and, see them through like such valuable times of their lives. Like, this summer camp experience isn't just for us, it's for the kids as well. And you do make such an impact on these kids'
hmm
lives, and you do shape lives as well at the same time. And I think that's definitely something that I take away from the job, is that I don't get purpose and fulfillment out of a job back home like I do my summer camp role.
Same. It's
Hence
so hard.
why we're going back for the fourth one.
Oh yeah, round 4. It is hard though, because it's just like such a go 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 job all the time, and even though there'll be points where you are tired and you are run down, like you kind of like have to pick yourself up because you're like, "Right, I am in charge of these kids, like I'm looking after them, and like they are the main priority." Obviously you need to focus on yourself and stuff, but it really helps you develop a bit of resilience, because like even on those days where maybe you don't feel so great, like obviously there's nothing stopping you from reaching out for help or just telling like your leads, like I need to tap out for a bit. But like I found that even on the days where sometimes I was really tired or like minor things were stressing me out, I just needed to cry, but I'd be like, okay, I can have a cry, that's fine, but then like I've got to pick myself up, because like I need to make sure like the kids are all happy and that any conflict is getting resolved, and make sure that
Yeah.
they have the best time. So it definitely makes you much more resilient. There's so many just like transferable skills, really, isn't there, from working at a summer camp that you can take into like the real world outside of the camp bubble.
And definitely, and I really think, like I said, the job's hard. The
Hmm.
job's 24 hours, 6 days a week. You are gonna have your moments where you're tired and where you just think, oh, I really just don't know how much longer I can do this. But I can
Hmm.
guarantee on the days like that, I've always found that there's something that the kids have done that's made me realise what it's all worth.
Hmm.
And the kids pick up on your energy as well. And I mean, my kids do it often. Like if I'm looking tired or anything like that, like they'll come over, they'll make a laughing joke, they'll like have a meaningful conversation with you, and it just makes you sit and realize like what you're doing it all for. And
Yeah.
although 7 weeks sounds so long and it sounds like such a hard job being 24 hours 6 days a week, but like it's the hardest job you'll ever do, but you'll love it the most.
Hmm.
That's what I always say.
Yeah. It's like a week at camp feels like literally a day, but then a day feels like a week, doesn't it?
That's
Because
that is
like,
literally that's a
yeah.
perfect way to explain the camp.
So much can happen in one day that it literally could feel like you've been awake for 48 hours straight. But then, like, you'll start on Monday, it'll get to Sunday, and you're like, oh my God, like, that's 1 week gone already. And there's always something to look forward to, which is another thing I think I love about the job, is that although it's repetitive in a sense, like, you wake up, you go to breakfast, you do your 6 periods, you have dinner, eat evening activity. Like the evening activities are different, or
Yeah,
like there's always like something like different happening at camp, or it might be like you have 5 days in a row where it's pretty much the same, but then you've got a theme day and it's like Western Day and you're doing Gold Rush. I don't know if you do that, might be our camp thing, but there's like loads of like random little things that just keep it so exciting. And I think like obviously the main reason a lot of people probably come and work at camp is for that fun side of it, but yeah, you've got to remember like you are dealing and working with kids. So if
yeah.
you enjoy working with kids and you enjoy having fun, then put them together. Then summer camp is a great place for you to work.
No, 100%. And I mean, like this isn't for us to sell summer camp to people. I think that's one thing like
Hmm.
about the podcast. It's that we just want to be here to tell you the stories and be that person that can answer the questions and tell you about our experiences. And I know like my experience probably isn't anything like your experience,
Hmm.
but when we come together and talk about it, it's just like we just get so happy about it. And I
Yeah.
think like we constantly have a smile on our faces and we love talking about it. And I think that's something I want everybody to get to experience if it is something that they want to do.
Okay, so we'll probably end it there, and we hope that you really enjoyed kind of listening to our journeys and how we got into camp. There's people decide to work at camp for so many different reasons, and we obviously just went through a few of them today. But yeah, if you're sitting there listening to this podcast and you're thinking, I've still got a few more questions, or I'm thinking about working at a camp, but I'm unsure still, you can feel free to message either of us. And we're sitting here filming a podcast about camp. We will happily sit and message you for 2, 3 hours about camp. So don't worry about that. we've got loads of topics planned already of things that we want to talk about in future episodes, but if anyone has any burning questions or anyone has anything they want us to talk about a little bit more, you can feel free to leave it as a suggestion. You know, we're releasing new episodes every week, so there's plenty time for us to cover any single topic that you can think of regarding camp. And we will see you next week, Monday at 5 p.m, when we'll be dropping another new episode. Thanks for listening.